record. All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo Rice, and my correspondent,
Simone Shree.
And Kyle Andrew.
All right, so today is the fun I call the Ramble Show. When I say ramble, it means that we're actually going to talk about or get into each one of us a discussion, or maybe something that we get into briefly in current events today that we really want to really talk about and have a dialogue about, whereas we probably previously didn't get the chance to really get into it, so we get to have that fun. So it's a topic we choose, we get to kind of do it. So it's going to be fun. You are welcome to chime in on the Facebook Live to ask questions or, you know, throw something up that you would like for us to talk about. It's a very interactive type show today. So, you know, all bets are off. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. But we're going to get into some current events first, and then and Kyle is actually going to be the man with the plan today. So after we do a little bit of current event stuff, he gets to be the man with the plan. So, Simone, what you got on the rundown?
So we're going to talk a little bit about what happened over the weekend. Daniel Prude, which may be a name that you don't know, is a Black man who was killed by police back in March, but it's just kind of now making national headlines because the family requested that the video be released. So we'll talk about that. That's going on in New York. That has a lot to do with like mental health and illnesses, and it kind of ties up the whole defund the police conversation, and it'll give us a lot to kind of to chew on there. And then also there was a deadly shooting in Portland last week, in Portland, Oregon, and there have been some updates in Portland. Portland's the only city that can say that they've gone strong every single day with protests since the George Floyd shooting. So I want to make sure everybody's kind of aware of what's going on there and understands the political dynamics at play from who these protesters are. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. Also, another big thing I wanted to bring to the table was President Trump talking about voting twice and this, essentially encouraging voters to commit what is ultimately a felony at the federal level. So we'll talk about that, the statement that he made and its significance and how other folks are responding to it. And before we finish it, I definitely hope we can get into some good news. If you remember the big ice bucket challenge back in 2014, it may have actually reaped some rewards, which is really exciting, and it may have actually made a difference, which is always really exciting. So I'd love to kind of share that and give people some happy news, some feel good news.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start with the lovely ungood news first. So wherever you want to start, I'm following the lead today.
Okay, well, Daniel Prude, so this happened in New York. This was back in March, where a call came in to Rochester police that there was a naked man running outside. That he may have been under the influence of something like PCP, and that he was a danger to himself. So this gentleman's name was Daniel Prude. We've come to learn he was 41 years old. The police came and they cuffed him and covered his head with what they called like a spit hood, because I guess he was spitting at police. He was belligerent. He tried to get up and to resist, and officers held him down. At one point his face was down on the ground for 2 minutes inside of the spit hood. After they held him down, he had to be resuscitated, so he did lose consciousness, but he did make it to the hospital, but he did die 7 days later. And the big part of this story, I think, that has come out recently is because obviously the family just had the raw video footage released, and you can look that up if you like to. That's always kind of something you have to check in with yourself about, whether or not you want to see the videos. But I think it gets into this larger conversation about defunding the police, because this was a call that his brother made because he knew that his brother was having some sort of an episode, maybe a reaction to drugs that brought on a state of psychosis. Maybe he was dealing with other underlying mental illnesses or diagnosed mental illnesses, but essentially he made a statement that he completely regrets having made that phone call. That he thought his brother was going to get help. He did not know that something, violent or, let alone deadly was going to happen. And the officers have not been charged yet, but there's 7 officers who are involved total. They've been suspended. The local police union says that they're also going to look into it, and New Yorkers held a vigil, for him last night. So I think the reason why I wanted to bring this up as part of this larger conversation is because there's a lot of ads going out right now, some of which are endorsed by President Trump, who's running for re-election, talking about how dangerous it is to defund the police. And if you haven't seen the advertisement, essentially it's a woman calling saying she needs help. I need help, please come. She's called 911 and she's receiving this automated recording which says, I'm sorry, due to defunding or lack of funds, we will be with you in about 7 business days, or something like that. Something really scary and petrifying that leads us to believe that if the police are defunded, we will essentially be a policeless, lawless, purge-esque country. And the reason I want to bring this up is because groups like the ACLU, groups like Human Rights Watch have all kind of talked about, and the NAACP, have talked about what it may mean to defund the police. And every city, you know, gets to manage their police as they'd like to within federal law. But essentially, calls like this that relate to an individual who is clearly having a mental health episode, or related to an individual who may be maybe homeless or in transitioning, maybe loitering, doing something that could either lead you to believe that they did not have complete awareness of their faculties at the moment, or doing something that doesn't require, that isn't a public safety risk. Defunding kind of speaks to the idea that maybe we don't need police to respond to these sorts of calls. Maybe we don't need police to come and assist someone who's having an episode, someone who's a danger to themselves. Maybe there's a different sort of first response for that. Maybe it's EMT, maybe it's something else. But the idea is that maybe we don't need to use police for these sorts of functions. And this has happened in other situations as well. There's a very viral video of a man who was having a mental episode and who was arrested by police. He was detained and he was given to an emergency medical technician team after he was found like walking along the side of the highway without a shirt and had no idea where he was or what he was doing. But he was abandoned by that officer. He would not tell, this was in Orangeburg County, he wouldn't tell the EMTs what his name was. He wasn't responding, he was almost lethargic. And the EMTs were very impatient with him and basically said, okay, well, I guess you're going in the back of the police van because you're either going to talk to us or you're going back with the cops. So he got in the back of the police car and the police officer stopped at a gas station and opened the door for him to walk out. The man walked right back onto the highway and was then hit by a truck and died. And there's the middle of a suit right now because of that exact situation. His name was Paul Tarashuk. And you can see in the video, he's visibly lights on, no one home. So it's a dangerous situation, again, when someone's a danger to themselves or they're having an episode and they're put in a situation where they're confronted by law enforcement and they see guns or they feel restrained and they don't react the way that we would like them to react. So thoughts?
I mean, I at some point, like, given, because we've seen that kind of scene play out. I think I was here in Atlanta. It was a guy in the project, and he was running around with no shirt on and stuff, and the police got involved. And it didn't end fatally, I believe, but it was not handled well. Mm-hmm. I don't, at this point, given with what we're dealing with, my first instinct, if it's not something that is violent or something that really requires police, I'm not calling them. Especially in this kind of situation where we know, because we're consistently seeing it, that this is not a type of situation that police really are necessary for. I don't know. I'd rather would have called the EMT or something. I don't know. I just would not have called the police, you know, given the fact that knowing he's a little skitsy and having an episode or whatever the case may be. It's just not a good situation to put the police in, especially given all this going on. I'm not sure to blame anybody. But I just feel like in that moment, his brother should have made a better decision. And I hate to say that because it probably was a lot going on, but just given all that you know was going on with police and just people and them just not understanding, and you never know. There may be some police that would have handled it differently. Whatever. I'm just not willing to take the risk with a loved one if I know that they're having a mental breakdown or something of that capacity. I just would. I don't know. I feel like this one was kind of we need to make a better decision in this kind of situation type deal. Doesn't excuse the behavior, of course, but now you get your brothers added on a everlasting, longer list of people having fatalities with interaction with the police.
But which is when something like that is wrong, we're conditioned to call 911. You know, so I mean, like that specifically is calling the police. So like, how do we call specifically the EMT in certain situations where we don't want the police to come out? Because if I'm in a situation and I'm not being bothered, I'm not being harmed, I don't feel like my life is threatened by another person, I don't necessarily want to call the police, but I want to call somebody who can possibly get this person the help that they need, you know, probably get them on some kind of medication, detain them until whatever they're on is worn off, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so like, whenever somebody's in a situation where they just feel unsafe or they want to help somebody else, they immediately call 911 and then the police come.
I think that's the fear too. It's that conditioned response. Like that's what we're taught to do. And we figure once we call them, they'll figure out, you know, who really needs to be there, who needs to stay. But we can just continuously, that's not the case. And it's sad because there's going to come that story that we hear about where someone needed police, but they were afraid to call the police because of what we've been seeing, and so they don't call the police, and then maybe they face criminal liability because they didn't intervene. I think in Minnesota, and I'm sure in several other places, it is a criminal offense not to act if someone is in immediate or imminent danger. It's actually something you could get in trouble for. So I don't know. I know that my brother mentioned in his apartment, an apartment he was living in once, that there was a guy who always seemed fine, and then one day really did not. And he began almost, he moved everything out of his neighboring apartment in the same hallway, like his couch, his bed, his mattress, like threw everything in the hallway, was emptying his fridge, was not speaking in clear sentences, would not put on clothes. And when he noticed this and his other neighbor noticed this, they were like, even for them as like lay people, not medical trained people, they were like, this is clearly a psychological thing. This is not they didn't feel in danger, but they were worried for him, obviously. And he was very incoherent and very agitated as he saw people in the hallway. So I think ultimately the neighbor, not my brother, spent enough time talking to him that he found his sister's phone number in his cell phone and just called her, and she came and actually drove him to a hospital. So I think that was a situation where—
my question. Mm-hmm. That would be the question. Like, when we see these videos, we get snapshots. We don't get any history. We don't get any, none of that. So I guess my question would be, is this something that he's dealt with before? Is there a history? Is there somebody in the family they could have called that is used to dealing with him? I just don't think I would have immediately called the police. And if I did, I would have thought about what I like to think of my feet. Yeah. So I would have thought about what I was going to say. It'd have been something like, well, my brother's unconscious, versus, he's running around, blah, blah, blah. I would have explained it in such a manner that they'd be like, oh my God, we're going to send the EMT versus we're going to send the police. I just would have thought about something like that, because my fear of my family member, something happening to them. But I think like that. So I just would have. When you
call 911, can you ask for the EMT instead of the police to come out? Can you do that?
I think you can ask, but I don't know if you have the discretion to determine that. I'm sure you can ask. Again, like they're all emergency response. They're all emergency response. Some are considered first responders, like when we talk about EMTs, that's, or firefighters, but they're all technically emergency responders. So I think, but I'm sure you can specify that. And I've definitely heard 911 operators ask, like, okay, well, do you need this or do you need that? And, it's a situation that's just unfortunate. And I think, like you said, we're at a point where we're definitely all going to at least second guess whether or not we make that phone call. And you just hope that you haven't second guessed the wrong way. And, but it's a lot to have on your conscience, I think, regardless. Yeah, that's a lot to have.
I think I'm to a point where I'm going to really do what I normally would do. So like when I go places, I get to know people. So I'm almost to a place where I'm like, you know what? You might need to get to know the police in your area, so that if something ever happens, oh, that's Ricardo, we know, I know him, blah, blah, blah. And there'll be a little more consciousness when they come to deal with a situation, heaven forbid I have one, that I can't handle. That kind of ideology. I think that's where we're kind of headed at. We might need to really get to know the police officers and so on and so forth in our areas, just as kind of a little assurance that, hey, at least
it definitely makes a huge difference.
So they don't come out guns ablazing. In a good manner, like, oh, Ricardo, blah, 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 it must be something serious for him to call, something like that. I feel like that's kind of where we're kind of headed at this point, because, like you said, I don't want to be a situation where all of us are scared to call the police if we really need them and we do something we ain't got no business doing, So I think I actually saw this video and I turned because I was like, oh God, here's another one. I can't do it. Because I remember seeing a bag over his head. I remember him saying something. I was like, oh no, I can't do this, not today. I'm not. Yeah. I'm just.
Like you got to check with yourself before you see those videos for sure.
Because I'm
okay,
just like.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I'm done.
Okay, so I wanted to move to the Portland story really quick. We I think briefly talked about Portland and the protests that were going on. That was my place of birth. I just want to say for everyone's edification, because I think Portland's been getting a lot of flack, especially from center right and right wing individuals, that Portland is just a protest place. Oregon is very much just a place of civil disobedience. It's a place of civil rights and human rights. And when I was growing up, protesting was like a weekend activity. And it wasn't always in the streets marching, but it was always going on. If we went to go get coffee somewhere or go to a restaurant, there was a petition to sign. Like, it's a very socially conscious place. Like, that's just how the atmosphere of the environment is. When I went to school, if I was sitting in the cafeteria, it was not abnormal that we were trying to get the cafeteria ladies' pay increased or something. Like that just was not abnormal. So this is, again, the 98th day that Portland has had a protest since the George Floyd shooting earlier this year. Most recently, though, an article came out in the Los Angeles Times, which I really recommend you read. It's called The Gentrification of Black Lives Matter. And it's essentially talking about this co-opting of a movement that was supposed to be about police brutality, and especially Black and brown people and our community relations with police, to something much, much different. And in this particular protest, or in this incident that involves a man named Michael Reinl, a white gentleman, 48 years old. He was an Antifa supporter, very well-known Antifa supporter, who was shot when officers tried to apprehend him. He was actually a suspect in a shooting of a far-right protester last weekend. So they tried to apprehend him, and I guess he was running on foot, according to police, and they shot him. 4 officers opened fire. So this rally, the shooting happened in Washington. This rally happened in Portland. There's a few far-right groups that have been coming out in support of Back the Blue and in support of President Trump's re-election, and they've been coming out to these BLM protests, well, I shouldn't say BLM protests, they've been coming out to these protests. And so there's been Antifa supporters, and then there's been these pro-Trump caravans with either President Trump's name on them or with like a different sources name, the Proud Boys, Patriots, the Patriot Party. There's a few different far-right groups that have come out as well. There was a shooting last week of a far-right activist. He wasn't killed, but he was shot, and the suspect was this gentleman, Michael Reinl, who police tried to apprehend. U.S. Marshals actually came in, and it was an encounter, and he was killed. So they weren't able to confirm that he was armed at the time. They are saying, the lieutenant is saying he was just evasive, he was just running. So this is, I think, a situation as far as, or I should say as well, he admitted to the shooting. He interviewed with Vice News, and he went on social media and admitted that he did shoot the far-right protester. But independent of the story, I am very interested in kind of what these marches and protests have become and what they look like now and why they look like that, and like the people that are out there for all these different reasons. I mean, everyone is not out there because of what happened to George Floyd. Everyone is not there because of Breonna Taylor or Ahmaud Arbery or really any racial injustice, or really even police issues with police in general. There are a lot of different agendas being pushed at a lot of these protests. And they're not all Antifa or far left protests, because the mayor of Portland, there was a riot and a bonfire basically outside of his apartment building this week. And he's agreed to move and leave his apartment building, his condo, because he doesn't want to endanger other people there. He's on the 16th floor, and there was basically a bonfire going on outside of his building, and threats that he's receiving from far right protesters, pro-Trump protesters. So it's not just far left, not that makes a significant difference, but are the Black people in your lives still out there protesting and marching, or has this become a angry, political, majority white American phenomenon? I mean, I feel like that's what I'm mostly seeing.
I definitely knew some people that were out there in the Atlanta protest. There was one on Edgewood, and I don't know if you guys remember the guy who was the white guy who was in the pickup truck and on Edgewood, and he just kind of let fire out on whoever. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who actually was hit by the bullet, one of the bullets, and now he's paralyzed. So for me, I haven't personally protested since George Floyd. I did protest like in 2016. I forgot his name, Philando Castle. I protested for that. But I feel as though the protest this time around became a distraction. A lot of people get really good pictures out there for Instagram, but they're not doing anything other than marching and making noise and vandalizing their communities. Mm-hmm. So I feel as though it's very cliche, but it's the truth. I think that the action that we should take is to go out and vote, donate to Black Lives Matters or any other activist nonprofit organization. I feel like that's what we should be doing.
I agree with him. Like, I had friends that went to Washington, and all they did was do photo ops and march. And I'm not saying that their actions were disingenuous. What I'm saying is, okay, well, when you came back to Atlanta, what did you do? Like, that should have, because I know the thing is they want to be able to show pictures of people years from now. Oh my God, I was in Washington when they were honoring that particular movement. I was in Washington with my black fist up saying Black Lives Matter. That's cute. But when you came back, did you vote? Did you get involved in your local politics? Did you try to really raise awareness of what you saw when you were in Washington? What did you do when you get back? What was the takeaway? Because I find myself saying this a lot lately. What is the takeaway? You know, we do a lot of these things, but again, what is the takeaway? You know, in the older days when I think of protests and stuff, they were really in it because their very lives depended on it, and it was that vital to their day-to-day survival that if we don't get these things changed, this, you know, we're as a people, we're just never going to rise. I feel like now we go for all these instinctively different reasons, and I'm not saying that they didn't do it back in the old days. They just seem more unified mentally. That as a community, we've got to show this strength, and not only show this strength, but when we leave here, we have an individual duty to continue the good fight in our local community. Our collective is for federal. Our individual is for local. And I feel like we're not doing it. I feel like everybody's there for different reasons. It's cute that we see the pictures and the blackface and the protests and stuff. But again, what is the takeaway when you get back to your local community? You know, are you getting involved in something? Are you starting something? You know, and I think that's another thing. There's so many outlets that we can use that we underutilize when it comes to important stuff. We'll do 50,000 TikTok videos because we're bored. How many TikTok videos have you done for something that will pertain to Black Lives Matter or something that will bring awareness to some issue that's in your local community? Like a YouTube channel, you know, have you done a video for your audience with something that's near and dear to you as it pertains to the movement? Like, I feel like there's a disconnect, or there's this mutual, that things just don't go together. Like, my marching is all I need to do. My showing up is all I need to do. That's the beginning. You showing up should start something in you. The fact that I'm in Washington marching with people that look like me and people who don't, with a collective mindset, supposedly, with one goal, should ignite something in me that when I get back, I want to be the change agent for my community. Things that I've seen, things that I haven't spoken out about. Now I feel empowered to speak out about them because I believe, because I've seen it, that there are others who probably believe like I do and are just waiting for somebody to follow because they may not necessarily be a leader. It's got to be something like that. And I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing people just doing photo ops for social media and stuff. And y'all cute, boo, y'all cute. But when you get back, what are you doing? Because you're going back to life as usual. What are we doing?
I'm not saying that I'm not saying that social media is a bad thing. You know, post your pictures. That's all great. But I think it's just people, or they go out there only for that reason, to show that they were there. You know, and I just think that that's the wrong reason.
So the time that this has frustrated me is when I've been at meetings where we're actually discussing some of these issues, and where there are folks who will come in and they're all ages. It's all the young people, but not just young people. They'll come in and they'll wait for that microphone and they'll ask like a controversial question and get the picture and then just leave. Sometimes leaving before they even get the answer from whoever these people are. And it's like, again, people have to understand that you have to follow through with these things. They take a lot of time, they take a lot of effort, a lot of energy. As we're all complaining about voting all the time, every county has a Board of Election meeting with the elections office every month. And they've been virtual in every county since this thing began. If you don't know how to send an email and say, hey, I want to sign up and submit a comment, and just watch the damn meeting, listen to the excuses they're making up, challenge them on those questions. If you're not going to be a part of what those solutions are, and mind you, activists are on those calls as well. So organizations that are in the middle of lawsuits right now with these election officials, about the corruption and stuff that they've seen. If you're not submitting your voter fraud or voter intimidation reports to like the ACLU, for example, who collects this information all the time. If you're a Democrat, I know the Georgia Democrats do. I'm sure the GOP has something similar. If you're not reporting it, and if you're not like actively participating, then you can't complain. I don't think, again, that there's anything wrong with protesting. I believe in that because, quite frankly, change happens with money and attention. I think those are the two drivers of change, period, money and attention. So it's important. However, there's a whole process and there's a level of education that you have to be willing to commit to. And there's groups out there, a lot of groups. I discourage people, quite frankly, from starting things that are brand new if there's already something out there that you can join. Now, if you can't, for whatever reason, if there's barriers, if they're just not doing what you really, really want to do, fine. But a lot of times that's already there and they need you. They need more people. They need more infrastructure. There's groups that go out and do education to schools, to churches about like, listen, these are the people on this ballot. These are the ones who have been responsible for A, B, C, D, E. And these are the ones that vote how you want, but if you care about these issues, they've been bad on them. Like they can't tell you who to vote for, but they will give you everything you need to know so you can walk in there with some ammo, with some information, even if you don't have the time to do it all yourself. But these groups need more people. So if you care about it, you could be a person to help to do that, to help to educate people and let them know that these two people running for sheriff, well, this is one of them's record, or these two people running for sheriff, this is what one of them said, like literally on social media, like last month. And how do you think he's going to treat you when he's sheriff? So the information is there, but I recommend people do it. Vote 411, vote 411, vote411.org is the easiest site that you'll find that I've seen, where you can figure out the people that are going to be on your ballot before you go and see your ballot. You can figure out, they update it real time. I've been checking to see how frequently they update it. And I like it because they explain to you what each office does. So they'll tell you what the sheriff does. They'll tell you what this judge does. They'll tell you what the mayor is really responsible for and what they aren't. A lot of times when we go to these like town halls and have these protests, we're yelling at the wrong people. We're yelling at people who can only do so much, or we're yelling at people who are the face of the institution but can't necessarily change it. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, everyone's responsible or reporting up to somebody else. So if you're, like for example, if the police chief gets fired, fine. You know, that's what happened in Atlanta. Erica Shields was let go, and I'm not saying that she had a very important job, but police departments that set their own agendas are still liable to the mayor. They're responsible for the mayor. We have state laws that can govern what police can do, and then we have federal laws that govern what police can do, and we have a Supreme Court that has given a lot of precedent, a lot of power to police. So there are lots of people responsible. Very rarely is there just like one big bad whoever. So anyway, I hate to preach about it, but it's a big issue, obviously, and so there's a lot to be done. And so you just want to do a lot, you have to kind of, commit basically.
All right. So we're going to shift it to good old Kyle, and we're going to start our conversation / I don't like the word rambling, but we'll say our kind of dialogue part, but we can pick a topic and you put it on the table and you talk about it and we just kind of chime in. So Kyle, you get to start. So what do you want to talk about today? What do you want to get into?
I definitely want to present this to you two because, especially Ricardo, he was very, very excited last week about it. I wanted to bring up Verzuz, but I also wanted to talk about what Verzuz we might want to see in the future. Because me personally, I was telling my mom, because she was also excited about it, and I had a couple of friends who were my age that were pretty excited about it, but I don't know their music that way. So I watched like maybe 15 minutes of it, and I was just kind of like, okay, cool, So I want to know what your take on it was, and also I want to know who you might want to see in the future, because I have a list of Verzuz battles that I might be more engaged with. And who do you think?
Okay, so here's the thing. Like I watched Verzuz. I think I watched the one with Snoop Dogg and DMX, which was cute. I think I haven't watched very many of them. Jill Scott and Erykah Badu. I think that Monica and
all right. What about Kirk Franklin and Fred Hammond?
Oh yeah. Kirk Franklin and
Fred Hammond.
Was it Fred Hammond or John P. Key?
Fred Hammond.
Okay, I kind of watched that one. I think that Monica and Brandy solidified not only the power of Verzuz, but what they really can do. I'm from the era when both of them came out. So for me, it was a big deal because, these girls pretty much almost came out at the same time. But even when they came out, they were two different artists. They both looked young. They were both pretty women, but they both done distinctive things in their own right that really makes them different. The reason I think Verzuz for those two was so big was because it really that platform really brought those two young ladies back together. And those two were trailblazers for my generation as it pertains to young artists making a name for themselves and doing some great things. So it was the first time I literally sat there for 3 hours and watched those girls go back and forth. I did. And I don't normally do that. Like I'm in and out. I was like with Jill Scott and Erykah, I was like, okay, y'all just playing music. With those girls, there was actually histories to those songs. Mm-hmm. They had memories from those songs. And it was amazing for us because a lot of that stuff, we just heard the music. We didn't know the backstory on a lot of how that music was made. So I think that's what was significant about Brandy and Monica, because when they shared those stories, there was one time where Brandy was like, well, Monica, did you know that the beginning of this song was me and my dad? And Monica did an interview with B103 like yesterday or the day afterwards, and she was saying that meant a lot to her because out of Brandy's camp, Brandy's father was the one that was always cordial to her, and he said something to her in a moment that she has treasured for a lifetime. So I think that's what made the big deal. I saw a post that said, if you would have brought the idea of doing this with Brandy and Monica, big companies, big media companies would have passed on it and said they don't have enough clout to carry that many people. And the post was saying that is the importance of knowing what you do and understanding that sometimes you have to create your own table to do something. Because those girls, I watched that meter. Those girls held 1.2 million people's attention for 3 hours. For 3 hours, I watched that thing. The lowest it went was 1 million. Even when they took a break and came back, I was like, oh, that might be it. 1.2 million people came back to watch the remaining hours. It was powerful. It was a moment. Now, moving forward, who I would want to see, I honestly don't know if anybody has that level of impact to captivate people for that long. I don't know. Like I said, there was so much more to it than just the music. Those girls signified something for the culture, especially for my generation, that we were willing to be captivated for that long. I don't know if anybody else could do that. Now, I did see one for Mary J. Blige versus Faith. That I would watch because I honestly had said we need to find somebody that can go with Faith. Because Faith Evans, I would love to hear the story about a lot of those albums because I know Biggie Smalls, Lil' Kim, and all of them would be mixed into it, which would make it really interesting. I think that with Mary J. Blige, they have the catalog that can go toe-to-toe, and I also think they have the story that can go toe-to-toe because we all know that Mary J. Blige writes from a place of whatever she's going through, whether that be husband, hers with tie in Casey and JoJo, especially Casey because they were dating. I think they both have stories that would captivate people for an extended period of time. I don't know if it'd be 1 million people, but I think they could get us some good numbers. But that's what I think. Simone, what you think? What you got?
I found it to be very captivating. So I watched the whole thing as well, and I don't stay up late, so it was a big deal to me. I grew up with both of them, probably not as close. I mean, I was young, I was a baby, but to me, that's just real R&B music. And so I really had an open mind, I think. I told you I'd listened to Brandy's most recent album before the verses, and I wasn't bowled over per se. So, but I'm glad. So here's the thing: there's been so much.
Wait, what?
I wasn't. There's been so much tension between the two of them for so long, and I thought it was all BS for a long time. I really did, or I hoped that it was. But every time I've seen them appear together, it's like oil and water. You know, they have very different personalities, and I think it was explained really well once when they said, you know, Monica's from, you know, she's from the A, and she should have
College Park, from College Park.
Right. And Brandy's not, you know, and I think that between the punching incident and between the animosity that's happened between them, I just kind of feel like even as grown women, there's just this underlying tension. Like there was a moment in the verses where Brandy was trying to make a joke and trying to be light, you know, but you know, she was trying to make a joke, and I feel like it wasn't a joke to Monica. And I feel like ever since that moment, it was just kind of downhill. I wish I could play it. Maybe we could put the link in like the YouTube description, because it was like this exact moment where everything just sort of went downhill from there. And it was like Brandy thought we were gonna like sing along together, and Monica was like, "I'm not in a group," but she said, "No, quote, we ain't a group." And there was just all these little shady moments that I felt like, damn.
Monica said, when I watched the interview with B103, and I'm assuming the guy that interviewed her knows her. So Monica was saying everybody kept trying to find stuff, but she was like, and I've spent a little time around Monica because I did her birthday party for one of her sons when I was event person at Andretti. So I spent a little time around her. I think versus, if you really paid attention, and you really listen to their music, I think Versus really showed you these two women, these two ladies are two different people. Brandy, and they were groomed for two different places in history. Brandy is the girl who was cultivated by her mom, Sonya, who we saw when they did a reality show, Sonya Don't Play. Her dad gave her vocal lessons. Brandy was groomed for something different. TV, baby dolls, being the first Black Cinderella. She was groomed for something different. Monica, and she kind of alluded to it. Monica, you know, was kind of in a trial and error thing. She talked about when she did Miss Thing and how she was given, I think, Dallas' attitude about what she was and wasn't going to do. And even after about Monica's third album, you see Monica shift to something completely different. There were songs that Monica played that I was like, I have never heard this song, and I don't want to hear this song. Like, this is real for me. I was like, this is a little ratchet for me. It's cool though, because Monica became a hip hop girl, and she started rolling in those circles. Even the new single she dropped, I was like, this is some hood stuff right here. But she's from College Park. She's from College Park, and she's that girl. And most people that know Monica be like, yeah, Monica, look, she's from College Park. She can be that girl. Gorgeous. But they're two different artists, and I think that's what the Versus should have shown people. You can't put them in the same box. They're not the same person. They're two sides of a very instrumental coin that should be appreciated in that regard. And that's just what it is.
Yeah, okay. I feel that. I mean, I really think it's a time of healing. I was hoping, again, that they would just kind of use this as an opportunity to just really close all doors. And I think they did. I just think they just have different personalities, but I don't know. I don't know. I hate to see the competition between. I will say that I believe that Monica won the Versus battle. That's what I'm saying. Oh man, we're not doing that.
No, we're not doing that. I'm sorry. I love Monica. When I say love, Monica is so gorgeous to me. Even that night, she looks flawless. But when it comes to music, I'm sorry. If you go through my media player, you're going to find a butt ton of Brandy, because Brandy music just, and like I said, for Monica, after about her third album, I was kind of in and out with her music because it just took a turn. With Brandy has always stayed consistent being a R&B artist. That's who she is. I feel like Monica kind of got into being more of a R&B hip-hop type artist. Brandy has stayed true to R&B from the get. There were songs that Brandy played. I'm sorry, none of Monica's songs could go up against. She did good, but there were just certain songs that Brandy had that we were just like, no, that's it. I'm sorry, she took that round. That's just it. You can't compete with it. But again, that you create music based off experiences. Monica has been married, 2 or 3 times? She has 3 kids, so her experiences are significantly different than Brandy. Brandy, has 1 child. She has a different family dynamic. Her experiences are different, and it's reflected in their music. So, I just can relate to a lot of stuff Brandy be saying about Versus, some of the stuff Monica be allowing rappers and stuff to get on her track. It's just different for me. I relate more to Brandy. So I personally thought Brandy was that chick. I don't think there should be a winner, and I think we need to stop doing that. I think Versus is for the culture, and I think that this particular Versus showed the power of this platform where you can get 2 artists to sit side by side, talk about their music, play their music, and everybody wins. I don't think we need to get caught up in just because it's called Versus that's what it is. Honestly, they might have to think about renaming that, because I think it creates an atmosphere that we don't want to create, where people feel like there has to be a winner, and we spend another week going back and forth about who we think wins. I don't want us to get caught up in that. It was an opportunity. They used it. It was amazing. Every team, if you team Brandy, you're going to claim she won. If you team Monica, you're going to think she won.
But that's why I'm saying what I'm saying is because I'm not a Monica fan. I'm not a Monica fan. I don't appreciate Monica's voice nearly as much. And I've never been a fan of her music, really. But when you just put the hits back to back, I just felt like Brandy had like a handful. And Monica just had a whole consistent catalog. She just did. I just really liked her whole catalog. Like, she had a mix of R&B ballads versus just regular R&B songs versus up-tempo songs that you could dance to, and Brandy's songs that are up-tempo. Like, R&B is not just one thing. It's got a little tint. There are R&B ballads like I Will Always Love You, and then there are R&B hits you can groove to, like Pony by Genuine. Like, there can't just be one And I just feel like there was a more diverse catalog.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I'm asking both of y'all this. In our current climate, who do you think is an authentic R&B artist in the current climate with the new talent? Who's an R&B artist to you?
In the world we're living in now, not based off of what we know R&B, what it used to be, just like what we accept it as to be now.
I'm asking you because I want a distinction on who you deem is an R&B artist current time, and the new generation of new artists that are out, especially you, Kyle, in your timing. Who do you call an R&B artist?
For a male, I give it to Chris Brown. Chris Brown. For female,
wow.
There are a lot.
Really?
There are a lot. There are a lot. There are some good ones, and then there are some ones who are like, okay, I like, you know, I don't know. I really like Jhené Aiko. I do.
Jhené Aiko, she's consistent.
I like Jhené Aiko.
You call Jhené Aiko R&B artist.
That's new
name
age R&B,
name a
yes.
song of Jhené's that is not R&B, and prove me wrong, because I can't think of a song of hers that's not R&B. It's R&B music. Can she sing? That's another question, but it's R&B music.
She has a nice voice.
I don't call
what she produces is R&B.
So now, like, name a song that's not R&B that she's done, because I don't think she's deviated. I don't think she's like the other artists that have like dabbled. I don't think she's ever even dabbled outside of R&B.
Give me somebody else. I didn't expect y'all to say that. Give me somebody else.
I mean,
give me somebody else, y'all.
My answer would have been before now, like maybe last generation, but not quite Monica Brandy. In between, I would have said Ciara was an R&B artist, and then or Jasmine Sullivan, and now I would say, her, or
thank you.
Or Ari Lennox, or who's the other one?
Kyle, you're fired.
Or Kehlani's an R&B artist. Kehlani is an original R&B artist. But Chris Brown, Kehlani is an R&B artist. And name a song that's not R&B. But it's all R&B.
There's a very thin line for me for an R&B artist versus a R&B-ish pop artist. Some of the people y'all are naming, when I think of R&B artists, I think there's a specific genre, a specific sound that doesn't always translate to pop or mainstream. So when I think of R&B artists of today, I think about a Ledisi. Ledisi music sometimes crosses into mainstream, but she has an R&B sound that it just resonates in an R&B community that doesn't necessarily stream over into pop. A lot of the artists y'all name, to me, they're more pop artists. They have R&B-ish music and elements, but I don't consider them an R&B artist. Her is an R&B artist. SZA, I don't think they're on the same level, but they're R&B-ish. But
SZA can sing.
Well, no, she can't. That's a whole nother question. That's a whole nother question.
But I mean, like, going back, Jhené's music doesn't play on pop radio. Jhené's music is strictly played on R&B music stations. Now, if you want to talk, crossover voices, that's when you start naming the Ciaras, the Beyoncés, and the Rihannas, which is why I didn't even name them.
Yeah.
So,
I hear you.
Yeah, they're not R&B to me.
Yeah.
They're not R&B.
But at the same time, I think, Ricardo, you don't always understand the difference between R&B and neo soul, which is a whole nother subgenre. Like, you got to make sure that you're not saying because somebody pops that they're no longer R&B. That's not necessarily true. If they don't change, then they still count. And it's like neo soul is a whole other category. It's its own little bucket. It's not. I'm not a neo soul fan, but I am an R&B fan. But I don't appreciate neo soul. It doesn't have enough bump for me.
I don't really know. Like in the beginning, I feel like Jill Scott kind of created that neo soul space to me, and then over the years, Jill Scott has kind of transitioned into something else. I don't even really know. And I'll be honest, I don't even know how you distinguish neo soul from R&B at this point. Like I don't really know who fits into
I think it's dying. I think it's dying, and I think honestly, I think they're both dying. But I think R&B is having a comeback, is what I think. But I think a lot of them are. I mean, they're both shrinking genres in my opinion. Just like funk and soul. Like who's a current funk and soul artist? So like there are funk and soul songs, but very few artists that's just what they do. So I think it may have a comeback too, but I do think it's dying.
Well, I think that for the longest they were trying to distinguish hip hop music from R&B music, and I don't think you can really separate them per se, because if you tip into one, it's okay. And I think now that's what. And when I think about Monica, that's kind of what I think about. To me, Monica is like an R&B mixed in with hip hop. That's what she became. Brandy just stayed R&B. I don't know. I feel like I agree with you. I think that R&B music, thanks to artists like Daniel Caesar, her, Jasmine Sullivan, I think that R&B music has a revive that I think has come back really strong, because those kids are really like they make it. Shouts out to Lettucey, because her new album Wild Card, I brought that thing a week ago and I have not stopped listening to it every day because it's absolutely amazing. It is R&B at its finest. But I also say the same thing about her. Every album her has made is R&B at its finest, even when she adds hip hop elements. At its core, she's an R&B artist. So yeah, that's it. But Kyle, my question to you is the other half. So what were some battles that you had that you would want to see? For Versus?
I really want to see Usher versus Chris Brown. I really do. I think that'd be great.
That would be good.
I think that'd be great. I mean, of course, it's not going to happen. I would also like to see Rihanna versus Beyonce. That'll never happen. So I can dream.
Yeah, you know? I don't see that, but I see what you're saying though. I see what you're getting at. I guess.
Well, my question, Chris Brown and Usher can and definitely will happen.
But what would make you want to watch? Let's say Chris Brown and Usher go for 3 hours. What would make you want to watch them for 3 hours outside of just playing hit for hit?
Well, they definitely don't have any beef. I feel like can I be honest? I feel like a lot of people watch that to be messy and to watch the body language and just, you know, the music was one thing, but people were definitely reading, you know, and reaching for what possibly might be a problem, you know?
I disagree.
I think that's what kept a lot of people. I'm just saying.
I disagree, because I was thinking the whole time, like I love that but I was disappointed that they didn't perform it. Like I miss, like, I don't know if I want a versus that's just like a vibe. I kind of think, I don't know. I didn't really like that. I didn't really like that. My biggest thing was their teams didn't coordinate at all, and it was very obvious. Their teams did not coordinate. They did not have a game plan going in there of like, okay, this is how we can diffuse. Like they didn't have a game plan at all. So I don't know. I think it looks like that, and I'm sure people are going to reach. I was trying not to see anything. I never, but I mean, when she straight up asked, Monica straight up said, like, there was a time I was very confrontational or whatever, and Brandy's like, oh yeah, I know. And so that's not a real, like, you basically, and Monica was just like, why would you say that? I never did that to you. And she was just like, oh girl, I'm just kidding. I'm just working on my comedy. Like, nah,
Yeah.
They threw the tension in the air. They picked it up and they threw it in the air. So it was like you could not catch it. You know, I could ignore it. But
they went for 3 hours and they haven't been in the same room in 8 years. Like, I mean, come on, people. It's going to be.
That's what I'm saying. Their team should have.
I mean, you can't. There's not. We don't know how long. Look, we don't know how well the teams get along because apparently Ray J was there. So I'm assuming if Ray J was there, Sonya and Ray Sr. were probably there. On Monica's side, I think she said her brother was there and some other folks. I mean, I wouldn't expect for them to do. People were saying that they were disappointed that there was no performances, but that's not what Versus is built on. Nobody really performs, but I think they leave room to grow. I mean, Versus is still new. So maybe moving forward, they will, you know, make space to perform and stuff. It's just a principle. You know, the ideology that two young women were able to captivate an audience based off music be able to captivate 1.2 million people with just music and some stories for 3 hours says something about the culture and says something about people, what people want, especially our community, what we want to see, and what we're willing to watch on TV. And I think if we don't take nothing away from that, that should be the takeaway. We're clearly not giving us what we want to see because we keep saying it's hard to keep our attention. It's really not, because from a versus battle, and we're talking about real time, 1.2 million people, which I'm inclined to believe primarily us, were willing to ride it out for 3 hours. So to all the people from Netflix on the beat, particularly BET, we're telling you, you're not giving us what we want. You're not giving us what we want to see. because we were able to watch. We watched it with just music for 3 hours and stayed with it for 3 hours. It should be a lesson to the people that's supposed to be entertaining us and educating us. We need to shift what we think we want to see. That's my takeaway from it. We need to shift what we think we want to see.
The perfect versus battle. It has great music, two very well respected artists, and they have beef that they need to squash. Jay-Z and Kanye West. I would love to see that. That would get probably more than one. Yes, absolutely. They have some things that they need to talk out. Why?
You're not going to get Kanye West talks a lot more than Jay-Z does. So I don't see that even in the
I think that Jay-Z had plenty to say. I think he had plenty to say in that situation.
If you get Jay-Z to sit down,
he ain't gonna say it. Not in no verse. Kanye. No, because
you might have to pay him. Everybody else has been doing this for free. You might have to pay him.
I just think when you get into Jay-Z and Beyonce, two people who know how to control their narrative, you're not going to get them to sit on the stage, especially Jay-Z, with Kanye, where Kanye has nothing to lose and is extremely reckless, and expect them to really hash it out and talk. I don't see that happening. Jay-Z's he's going to think the whole time, he's going to be thinking about his brand. There's going to be a list of stuff he's not going to get into. It's just like when Monica brought up, everybody kept saying, well, Brandy, do the Moesha thing, and Brandy started to do it. Monica tried to get her to do it, and Brandy was like, nah, I can't do that, and she whispered something to Monica, which I believe was liability and stuff as it pertains to copyright for the Moesha thing. So Jay-Z going to be doing that the whole time. He's like, nah, I can't get into that because of my brand, or nah, I can't get that because I don't see it flowing like that with them two. Kanye will get him and say whatever he gonna say because he ain't got nothing to lose. Jay-Z controls that. It ain't gonna be that.
Is the point? Like it would break. I think the 1.2 million. I think is the idea.
For sure.
That would be a very successful.
For sure.
Yeah, but
I'm not asking them to have. I'm not asking them to have their come to Jesus moment on live. I'm asking them to fix it behind the scenes even and just come together and play their tracks. That's all I want. People need to see them back together, and I would
I don't know if you people to ride that out the same way for 3 hours. Now, people will come in initially. I don't think they'll ride it out for 3 hours. I just don't. I don't think those two.
Ricardo, I'm sorry, but that is the most nonsensical thing you've ever said. In the 2 years I've been doing this show, that is the biggest false news you've ever said. That is just wrong.
I think people will come in and they will get probably 6 million people to come in and break a record. But to ride it out,
they will not only ride it out, they will be on YouTube streaming live, watching reaction videos that will have millions of views by themselves. It will. These are two of the biggest artists on the face of the planet, so it's really not even a question. It's not a question.
Do you understand the history that Jay-Z and Kanye have?
I do and don't. So I will digress. I just don't know if people would ride. So y'all telling that both of y'all would ride out 3 hours with them two?
That's not a question. I would ride out 12 hours and call in from work. And I would not be alone in that regard at all.
So Kyle, you would ride it out for 3 hours?
It would definitely be playing in the background, but I'm listening and I'm watching, and my view would never leave until they end it.
I don't think that's going to happen, but
it's not.
I don't think that's going to happen, but
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I don't think it's going to happen, but I also believe that people who probably were not willing to do verses because it's probably not paid or because it hadn't gotten big enough, I think that Monica and Brandy has turned the tide because although it was free, when you look at what happened afterwards, the fact that those girls' music shot back up the charts and made made older music relevant again, I think now artists not only will be knocking down the door to do it, but I think people who probably will be like, nah, I'm good, will do it. What I actually hope will happen is they will use it, it'll create spinoffs. And they may create sub-departments where they may say, hey, we're doing a old school versus where they bring artists like Patti LaBelle versus, somebody else, and give them the opportunity for a younger generation to really hear their music and give them that opportunity for their music to come back in and bring a whole new generation, make a whole new generation hip to their music. Because a lot of times, Kyle particularly, your generation has sampled a lot of that old school music, and people don't know where it was sampled from. And I feel like that would be lovely for them to create a spinoff that kind of creates that platform, even if it's called sample verses, where people who've been sampled get to come on and really show, okay, well, you know this song from Kanye West, but this is actually my song. Here's the actual original, and they're going up against their peers. I think it's an opportunity that we didn't see until we saw this particular battle that they could do, that I think can carve out a nice place in history if they do it right. It's an opportunity.
For sure.
So, but
fair.
I'm not,
I would vote for we're almost out of time.
Yeah. But what was you about to say?
I was just going to say my 2 votes would be for a Trey Songz and a Neo battle. I want them to redo the Ludacris battle because the Wi-Fi was so terrible I couldn't even enjoy it. And I love Ludacris's catalog and I really couldn't even enjoy it. It was too choppy.
Wait, he did one?
He did one with Nelly, Luda and Nelly. And I would love to have them redo it and shoot it right because it was just so choppy and it was bad. So I would like to see that redone. I would not mind. What was your suggestion, Kyle? Usher and somebody? I wouldn't mind that.
Brown.
But I think Trey and Neil would be good. I think Alicia Keys and John Legend would be good. And I think, and obviously, I would like to see a Cardi and Nicki too, but it's just not going to happen. But I would love to see that.
Maybe Nicki and Kim.
No.
Mm-mm.
Nicki and Kim?
No.
If you're going to put Little Kim in something, it's got to be Little Kim and Foxy Brown. Now, honestly, that one, doing a Little Kim and Foxy Brown would have the same effect that Monica and Brandy did because, again, that's my generation. And in my generation, Foxy Brown and Little Kim were Monica and Brandy on the hip-hop rap side. So if they were to do Little Kim and Foxy Brown, they would get the same numbers. I would put money on it. They would get the same numbers because those two were the opposite in rap in my day. We would tune in for that battle. So to versus, do Foxy Brown and Little Kim, you'd get the same numbers because they hold the same spot in my generation, and we would watch it. But Alicia Keys and John Legend, nah.
I would love it. I would watch it. I would watch it for sure.
They have to do that during the day.
During the day?
Because at night, I'm going to go to sleep.
I would want to see it. And I can't think of anybody who she would be opposite. I was thinking about this with T.I. because I would love for T.I. to do it, but I don't know who his opposite would be. I don't know who else I would want to hear against T.I. But I would love for his catalog to come out. And his last album, I love his last album. So I feel like, but I can't think of anybody else he would go with. I really can't think of anybody for Alicia, but John Legend's the only person I can think of.
Yeah, but John Legend's catalog is not as extensive to me as Alicia Keys. I remember when Alicia Keys came out in like the early 90s. Like it's not, John Legend is like 2000.
No, she came out in the late 90s. She came out in 99 or 2000. Songs in A minor was Songs in A minor was the late 90s. But either way, a long catalog don't necessarily mean it's a catalog people have heard of or that it's comparable. I think in terms of like the number of hits, it may be much closer than you think. Especially her last one.
I don't know.
Her last one.
I don't know. John Legend, I like him, but he's not my favorite person. I like his music. He's cool, but Alicia, I've kind of strayed away from Alicia, but out the gate, Alicia Keys is the GOAT when it comes to what she did when she first came out, probably about 3 albums in. And then kind of after that, I was kind of like, okay, well, I don't really know what she's doing now.
That's why to me, they're kind of on the same level at this point, for me.
I just wanted to give me Foxy and Lil' Kim, give me Mary J. and Faith Evans, and I'll go along with Chris Brown and Usher. The problem with Chris Brown and Usher is don't do them until you're willing to let them perform, because those boys are performers. So don't do them until y'all get to a place where they can actually perform, because that's where you'll get the most enjoyment out of them too. Because I would like to see them two go head to head in a street dance, off. I'll be in the room, pop locket, and trying to spin around and stuff. Like that's what I get from them. Lord. So
I'm open to that.
All right. So I won't take us any further. Kyle, you did what you were supposed to do. So that was a good one. So all right. In the next 2 weeks, we will be going back to the studio, which Kyle has already seen. We will be going back to the studio. It's gonna be fun. Really, Simone? It's gonna be fun.
I want to go back.
I mean, if you want to come on a Monday to see it, fine. When we're in there shooting stuff, fine. That's how he saw it because he was with the TV team, so I showed him when he was in there. Like I said, the new studio is fire. Shouts out to the Plug ATL, Charlene and Khalid. They've been amazing. I love it. It's great. If you're looking for a studio, you're not looking to spend a lot of money, but you want to be in a lovely, nice, upscale space, definitely look them up. Y'all know I don't plug people very often, but for them, definitely Black-owned, Black excellence. I love it. It's amazing. So, yeah, 2 weeks. I'll definitely let everybody know to be on the fly. We're returning to the studio. Simone, you're going to love it. It's going to be amazing. And I'm looking forward to it as well. So I'll let everybody know about that. Outside of that, we will see everybody next Friday, same time, same place on the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. White.